Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Richard Horowitz. I'm the co-host for the Healing Lyme Summit 2.0 with Dr. Talks. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Eric Zielinski. Dr. Eric Zielinski, he is a chiropractor who got into the space of environmental toxins, and we're going to talk today about natural living, how to decrease the toxins around you and in your body to support your immune system and detoxification pathways, a very important topic for chronic Lyme disease because we see this all the time. So, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be able to share maybe a different approach to how we should be treating Lyme and put our body in a situation where it heals itself even more naturally and more effectively. So I can't wait.
No, it's great. Mariah, who's my co-host, she's a naturopath and she always talks about the natural forms. And truthfully, we do a lot of natural stuff too. But as a board certified internist who does functional medicine, these diseases were so rough on people. I had to find, a medical solution. But you're right. There are many natural solutions that help people. And I'm really happy we get to hear your approach with it because you've been in this space for quite a while.
Yeah, Doc, I think it's a misnomer when people think about detoxification, when people think about how I heal. We want to put our bodies in the situation that our bodies can recover, whether from a heart attack, stroke, Lyme disease, autoimmunity, cancer. When we're just being exposed by an onslaught of chemicals all day, every day, through our skincare, through our cleaning products, through what we're breathing, the VOCs being emitted, we're in this constant state of low-grade chronic inflammation, and people wonder, why is it hard for me to lose weight? Why aren't my numbers balancing? Why aren't I getting better? And I'll say one thing. I've been shocked at the testimonials that we've gotten from people that claim, and part of our natural living family, that they haven't changed their diet. They haven't changed their exercise habits. They did nothing but just kick out the aerosols and the fragrances, and they just replaced it with natural volatile organic compounds that we know and love as essential oils. And next thing you know, they lose 5 or 10 pounds in a month because the body's metabolism starts to function in a better way. And so that's really the concept here, folks, is we need to put our bodies in the situation that it needs to be to heal. And it's really impossible when we're constantly triggering that immune system through environmental toxins. So that's my sales pitch. Hopefully people are picking up when I'm dropping down.
No, in fact, they don't even need a sale. All of my patients know at this point because when they see me, we automatically run serum heavy metals in the blood for mercury, for lead, for arsenic, for cadmium, for aluminum. Every person now gets tested for mold toxins. And we are finding the vast majority, I'm talking at least 80 to 90% of my patients, they're all loaded with mold toxins. They're loaded with heavy metals. I mean, with the California wildfires recently, the ambient levels of lead was 100 times above normal. And I will tell you a sad story. My mother, who died at 69 years old, she was using chemicals around her house, and I am almost certain this was the case. She was taking, I shouldn't mention the name of the product, but was putting it on the floor with her feet and doing this for years. And she had been a smoker. But she died of a very unusual form of lung cancer that when she saw these doctors, they said, we've never seen anything exactly like this. And we looked at the chemical exposure.
Yes.
I was certain that her immune system could not handle it. So, no, we're exposed to thousands of chemicals. And in fact, in the medical detective Substack, the part 3 I launched this morning was on things like, hey, the lipstick that you're putting on may contain high amounts of lead. So let's get into this, jump into this a bit and tell us, how do we reduce our environmental toxins? How do we get some of these natural products? Because you're right, we're overloaded and it's causing immune dysfunction, hormone disruption. And people do have a much more difficult time getting over these diseases with these toxins.
So what I want to paint the picture here is to stress that public enemy number one are artificial fragrances. And the first one that we could date back was Chanel number 5, right back in the early 20th century. And then when Dial soap came out, they introduced more artificial fragrances in an antibacterial solution. And that coupled together, we see a direct correlation to why we have so much Alzheimer's, dementia, autoimmunity, endocrine disruption, like you mentioned, cancer, and the list goes on and on. People oftentimes think of allergies. They think of respiratory conditions, which of course they trigger, but it goes deeper. And again, it goes back to this concept that what are we breathing in all day long? What are we filling our lungs with? And oftentimes we don't keep our windows open enough. We don't open our doors. We're just stuck in this cardboard wood box all day. And oftentimes people go from house, home to car to work to come back, and they're very rarely outside. And we're going to hopefully get a chance to talk about forest bathing, Shinrin Yoku, ancient Japanese practice that really helped revolutionize the way that I see this concept, especially during COVID. And I want to point out that it is very simple to look at your products that you have on a regular basis and easily determine whether or not someone has parfum or fragrance in it by just looking at the label. And the easiest solution is, unless you know for sure it is an unadulterated essential oil, which 99.99% of the time it's not. If you buy it at a conventional store, you can be sure there's artificial fragrances in it. And artificial fragrances have components known as phenols, which we know has a direct correlation with heart attack, stroke, endocrine disruption, and the list goes on and on and on. Doc, one study, I don't want to go into body care just yet, but I want to revisit what this does to the brain and what this does to the body. But ultimately, we need to recognize that there is a systemic inflammatory response when we're constantly smelling these fake chemicals. I believe wholeheartedly we weren't designed by God to interact with these fake chemicals. And what they are, they're knockoff synthetic versions of what we see in nature. So when you put your nose into a rose and you smell that beautiful aroma, those are volatile organic compounds being emitted from the plant. When you go walk through a densely wooded area, Shinrin Yoku, you're smelling just a cornucopia of beautiful aroma that is being emitted from plants and trees and whatnot. That's how we have been designed to interact. And to go even a step back, that is really the primal experience that we have with our six senses. The olfactory system is the first sense in the body that is developed, and is really what connects us to the primates. However, over the last 2 centuries, we've all but desensitized our need for olfaction. You don't need it anymore. You don't need it to live. But what do you think our ancestors used to determine whether or not there was an area that was safe to live, or food to eat, or something? Because when you would travel and you would be nomadic and you smell like deep sulfur smell, they just knew inherently that's not good. And we have desensitized our sense of smell to the point where we can't even recognize, Doc. We don't even recognize the dangers that we are putting ourselves through. So here's a litmus test I want to give to people, which is very shocking if you were to take this test. So next time you go to your favorite big box store, you could walk down the cleaning aisle and just stay there for a few minutes. The cleaning aisle with all the different chemicals that are just being emitted. Like, you could taste the chemicals, or you can maybe go to your favorite fragrance store at the mall. And here's the reality. If you do not get some sort of symptom or negative response from inhaling those toxic chemicals, you've desensitized your sense of smell to the point where you have lost that healing, evolutionary, that blessed gift from God to say, this isn't good. You should experience drainage. You should experience vertigo. You should experience a headache. You should experience nausea. I can't even go in those stores. I literally have to hold my breath when I'm at a big box store to walk past the cleaning aisle. And for those people who have retrained their sense of smell, they can't even handle being next to one of those fancy dancy candles at a dinner party. And when they go into a bathroom, that you hear that psst, psst, at the gas station, you recognize this stuff is everywhere. Everywhere. It should make you gag. It's very synonymous to the fact that we need pain to live. We need pain to protect us. So if you put your hand into a fire, you should feel that automatic knee-jerk response, that impulse to pull your hand out. Otherwise, if you've desensitized, or if your sense of pain has desensitized, you'll end up burning your hand off. And that is a real life issue. And so what I want to point out is we go back to olfaction, and we go back to sense of smell is the only sense in the human body that's directly hardwired to the brain. So there is no what's known as a thalamic relay. To paint a picture, when was the last time you've maybe stubbed your toe or cut your finger, cutting or slicing up organic carrots? Think about that split second where you didn't experience pain. It was like, I cut myself, I stubbed my toe. Now it hurt. The brain needed to interpret that internal response, that efferent afferent response, to say, hey, you hurt yourself. You don't have that with the sense of smell. There is no blockage. It's a direct right to the brain. And the part of the brain is the limbic system, where your mood, your memory, your emotions, your autonomic function are, your heart rate, your breathing rate. So many people remember Thanksgiving dinner when they smell a fresh roast turkey, or I always go back to my first girlfriend when I smell a woman's perfume today. I literally go back to the actual physical experience, the emotion, the physical manifestation of smelling a perfume that reminds me of my girlfriend from 25 years ago. And many of you can relate to that, how powerful smell is. And so the thing that we need to do is to give our sense of smell a break and kind of go on a detox. Just cut that stuff out. Put away or throw away, even better yet. Don't even give it away. It's trash. The aerosols, the plugins, the poo-poo sprays. Just start with the Febrezes and the spray stuff that is easily, readily available in your home. Just start with that. And if you want an easy solution, you could get a water ultrasonic diffuser on Amazon or at your local health food store, and you could put essential oils in it. And that produces, and we could go into which oils and how and why, but that is a very easy swap. And what you'll do is you'll start to resensitize your sense of smell, which is very empowering, by the way. And you'll start to tap into the healing power of aroma that our ancestors leveraged from the dawn of civilization. And that is the first thing. Artificial fragrances are in virtually anything and everything that has a smell. And again, like I mentioned, unless you know it says unadulterated essential oil on the label, guarantee you it's synthetic. And the problem, if you're curious, like why is this an issue? Because the chemical structure of the essential oil is perfectly situated to interact with the olfactory bulb and the nerve cells in the nose to stimulate a healing parasympathetic response in the limbic system. But when you have these knockoff chemicals that are basically very similar to the natural essential oil, but it's missing a hydrogen, it's missing an oxygen, it's missing a lock and key mechanism. It's very similar to trying to put a key into your door that's missing a tooth. It could fit into the door, but it won't unlock. And that's essentially what we're doing. And the same thing with other chemicals that are being emitted and seeping into our bloodstream and whatnot. So
Eric, just a quick question for you then. So a lot of the patients with COVID, and you know this, and the patients with neurodegenerative diseases, whether it's Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, they lose their sense of smell. It's actually one of the first things, right, in neurodegenerative diseases, because they've shown at this point, once you get something in the olfactory, it goes right up to the brain. That's actually one of the early signs of neurodegeneration. Now, a couple of my COVID patients, of course, they've lost their sense of smell. It has come back in most cases months later. Some, of course, sense of taste also. And my wife, by the way, has been a Young's Living Oil person for years. She's got these I didn't realize we were talking about this today, but my wife's got these things all over the house. And you know, she'll talk about here's lavender oil, you know, for the headaches and for relaxing. She's actually been into this for years. And we use essential oils. I don't use so much the ones that are, you know, aromatic, but essential oils is part of my biofilm protocol with cinnamon, with clove, with oregano oil. I'm using them actually for biofilms for treating Lyme and co-infections. But question, when someone loses their sense of smell or has been desensitized, and you've got these patients that, you know, are at risk, do you find that you've got protocols? Because I know sometimes they would take these essential oils and like put them in front of people and start to get them to retrain. How do you retrain someone when they have lost it? Because it is an early sign that the brain has been affected by inflammation.
Yes. And you want to focus on what's known as the high note essential oils. So when you smell a blend, for example, that might have 4, 5, 6 essential oils, the first smell that you get from that blend is called the high note. It's the one that is readily evaporating, hits your nose first, and then there's other ones that are more subtle. So peppermint, for example, is a great one that we could use to help retrain and stimulate. It's very invigorating. And for many people, it's like, whoa, I mean, this is intense. So some people we find that are especially overloaded with toxins. Unfortunately, those people with diabetes and obesity, they oftentimes have a very sensitivity to peppermint. They just can't handle it. It's like it's too much for them. So you have to work your way into something like that because it is so strong. But once you enjoy it, you go through. So you want to retrain, and it could be as simple as opening up the bottle and just smelling. Oftentimes, what we try to do is again stimulate the opposite side of the brain. You could plug one nostril and breathe in 5 seconds. You could do the same thing there. Aromatherapy inhalers are a great way. A side tip, again, there's so many little things on how to use, so many little tips on how to use these. But every time you open up the bottle, you're introducing oxygen, and that speeds up the shelf life. And so, no, you cannot use this for 50, 60, 70 years if you're regularly opening up the bottle. It will go rancid, and oxygen isn't our friend. So we try to keep the bottle closed as much as possible. So you could get an aromatherapy inhaler that is a great way of retraining, and you could do that. I like the aromatherapy inhaler. I'm going to show you one here. Women, it looks like, for the ladies out there, kind of looks like a lipstick tube. Guys, you can, like me, you can get a black one if you want. Kind of looks like a chapstick. But this is a organic cotton wick inside of a metal casing. Cost a couple bucks on Amazon or at your natural health food store. And you just essentially soak this cotton wick with 20, 30 drops of essential oil. And you could just be, this is the nice thing, it's very private, it's very discreet. You could be on an airplane, you could be at your office, you could be anywhere, and people won't necessarily smell it. It's not like having the diffuser behind me that's emitting the mist. So that's a nice way. But I want to point out one thing too, Doc. Don't stop using essential oils if you have lost your sense of smell. Robert Tisserand, the foremost expert in aromatherapy, he has been very clear through all of the research that we see that even though you won't get the emotional component, like the memory, that feeling, oh, lavender reminds me of my girlfriend or my boyfriend, or reminds me of this or that, you won't get that, but you will still get the physiological response. And when you're inhaling aromas like orange, for example, or citrus that are rich in D-limonene, a chemical that is highly anti-inflammatory, cancer killing, it produces dopamine and serotonin. So if you're having a down in the dumps kind of way, literally just inhaling orange and any citrus oil can help perk your mood. And there's ample, umpteen amounts of research studies that have shown that. And even research has shown that if you inhale lime or grapefruit specifically, it triggers lipolysis automatically. So you might not be able to smell it. You might not be able to determine the smell, but just do it in faith that your body is doing what it needs to be doing.
Now, in people, for example, like I'll walk into a room that's been freshly painted. I will smell VOCs, and literally
Yep.
within seconds, I will start to get sick. I will start to feel
Yep.
flu-like symptoms, headache. But I notice my greatest response personally for me is formaldehyde. It's outgassing of VOCs with that. I mean, I stay out of those stores, by the way, that you were mentioning before, because I can't stand being in them. But I don't necessarily get sick with all of them. But I do notice there are certain chemicals that my body like I will never paint the house with VOC paints. I can't do
Yeah.
it. I mean,
Yeah.
and then we try and actually limit it. So for those people, for example, like myself, that it's certain chemicals that stimulate it, but others. Now, I take a huge amount of detoxification supplements. I am
Yes.
taking, NAC and glutathione to take fat soluble toxins out of my body, make them water soluble, get rid of them. Is it possible? Because most of my patients, I've talked about this, they want to block things like NF-kappa B with NAC, alpha lipoic acid, glutathione. They want to stimulate NRF2 with broccoli seed extract, curcumin, turmeric, resveratrol to lower inflammation and open up those pathways. Is it possible the reason some people don't have as many of these stronger reactions that kind of work in the detox pathways and maybe they're not as overloaded? Because you're right, some of my mole patients walk into a room. This happened to a patient last week. She's going to her husband to different apartments trying to find a place to live. She walks in with her daughter, smells it, and goes, "Oh my God, we can't live here." And the husband goes, "I don't smell anything." And she gets out of there, and within 5 minutes towards the beach in open air, she feels better. She's
Yeah.
obviously one of these very toxic people. So is it possible that by stimulating the detox pathways, unloading it a bit with infrared saunas, all the things we can do, we might not be as sensitive to all of these aromas?
And that's a fascinating concept. I have not seen any research to suggest that. However, my basic understanding of detoxification is we need a full functioning immune system. I think, and that's what I do know that essential oils can help with, specifically because of the rich antioxidant capacity, anti-inflammatory capacity. It helps reset the immune function. And so that is one, it's like a roundabout way, but that's a beautiful thing about it is the sky's the limit on this kind of research. I haven't seen anything that suggests that, but it makes more than logical sense to me. And you mentioned formaldehyde, and just it's just not paint, y'all. Hold on, I have a list here I want to read because I recently have taught a master class on the different chemicals in body care and cleaning products, and we'd be shocked. Like the products containing formaldehyde, like doctor is saying here, all-purpose cleaners, bathroom cleaners, window cleaners, dishwashing liquids, laundry detergents, air fresheners. Again, that's a biggie for me. Floor cleaners, but the shampoos, conditioners, and hair treatments. It's literally everything and everywhere. And it might not be directly formaldehyde, but it's how formaldehyde is processed and emitted in the body once you expose yourself to lotions. You mentioned lipstick, foundation, ladies. I want to put a little bit of fear of God in you that unless you're for sure certain that all the products that you are putting on your body, you have a significant toxic overload versus the average male, just because of the makeups and the perfumes and the other things that typically are heavily fragranced. And baby products. This is really scary to me. So we're exposing our babies in utero. Actually, we have seen through the environmental working group that these chemicals seep into the bloodstream through the umbilical cord, as we've done an evaluation of umbilical cord blood. And we see dozens of chemicals, of which many of which are carcinogenic in the umbilical cord feeding baby. So formaldehyde is everywhere, and it is something that we really, really need to be careful about.
hmm a funny story about formaldehyde. It's not that funny. When I was in med school in Belgium, our first year, it was 2 years of anatomy. So you had to deal with the cadaver. So
Yep.
now I'm
Oh,
doing
yeah.
this in French. And I thought, all right, maybe I'm having a tough time just remembering the French words, but I would walk out of being with the cadavers with my white coat, with all of that formaldehyde. And honestly, I was so fogged out it was impossible for me to remember anything that I was doing. And I was asking some of my colleagues about it, and it was variable with it, but it was clear at that time that my own body had a very specific sensitivity. Now regarding these essential oils, my wife, as I said, has been into Young's essential oils and a bunch of things for years. How do you know if you get an organic product? Because again, I just published a medical detective Substack on this, and you're right. By the way, I'm writing a new book, by the way, for Simon and Schuster on why we stay sick and environmental toxins. I'm looking at the 16-point MSIDS model, which is the one I use for Lyme, and I've looked at ADHD, ADD, autism, Alzheimer's, the A's, cardiovascular disease, cancer. Every disease I've looked at so far, the environmental toxins are showing up, right? It doesn't matter what you're calling the disease. You're absolutely right about the cord blood. Why are we having autism was 1 in 2,000 in the 1950s. This will shock people if you don't know this. And then it was around 1 in 150. And right now it's 1 in 36. And what do you think that's from? I mean, it's not because we're better diagnosing it, it's from all the chemicals we're exposed to. So, how does a woman and a man know? Like when you're looking at your products at home, it may say organic. How do you know looking at these labels that this is absolutely fine? Because sometimes organic doesn't necessarily mean absolutely clean, right? Like how do you advise people to just make sure that what they're using is clean?
It's tough. And I wish there was an easier way. It's tough.
Mm.
Ultimately, there's a research conference that was in Italy a few years ago that evaluated this very topic, and they found specifically that essential oils extracted from the citrus rind, which is where the essential oil is. Lavender is extracted from the flower, same thing with rose, but in citrus, it's in the rind. So when you cut the orange, you smell that aroma. It's not in the fruit, it's not the juice. And they found that even in an organic farm, because of the runoff, because of the exposure of in a Monsanto sprayed farm 10, 15, 20 miles away, they're finding trace amounts of pesticides in organic essential oils. And it's to a point where I suggest if people are looking for essential oils, you get something indigenous and wild crafted. You want an essential oil to grow in an area that is ultimately as isolated as possible in the far backwoods that isn't exposed to neighboring farms and that grows in its indigenous environment. And that's really key. Like you can't grow certain things in America. Like you just can't do it unless you manufacture it in a, big ag way. So frankincense, for example, is from the Middle East. So you want to get your frankincense from countries like Yemen and Oman because that's where they're naturally grown. Right, the frankincense tree. So that is it. It's indigenous sourcing, making, because the need for pesticides is significantly less. And that's just the wisdom of God again. I mean, the plants have developed resistance to vectors over centuries, over thousands and thousands of years that you don't need the pesticides versus if you were to plant, for example, a cherry tree in Georgia where it doesn't naturally grow in abundance, you're going to have to spray something because the tree doesn't naturally have defense. So that would be it. Wild crafted is another way. When it comes to products as a whole, that is another thing. It's almost like a leap of faith. And I would encourage people, this is where balance comes into play, because if we don't, be careful. We'll end up like those folks that were so riddled with fear during COVID, they're walking around in hazmat suits. It's impossible to avoid environmental toxins. It just is. The air in our home, the Environmental Protection Agency has said, like the EPA has said, is 3 to 5 times more polluted than outside. And other studies have said up to 100 to 1,000 times more polluted in your home. So what do? I mean, you can't live outside. I mean, you know what I mean? You're not going to be Davy Crockett. I mean, you're not. Just think about what kind of lifestyle we want to live. Make sure you have a good high-powered air purifier. You regularly open up your doors and windows. You do your best, like you said, non-VOC paints. You start to kick out the chemicals. One thing, as you're mentioning about the neurocognitive inflammatory response, I want to share with you a study that I quoted in my last book that discussed chronic disease and the research substantiating the potential use of essential oils to help prevent and treat chronic diseases, one of which was Alzheimer's and dementia. And an Oxford University journal, again, this isn't a hippie, let's jump over the stick, howl at the moon, patchouli kind of study, because we get a lot of criticism. Snake oil,
my wife was doing when she was in Colorado, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. So we have an Oxford University journal that evaluated 190 plus countries in the world, essentially every developed country. And they wanted to see the levels of sanitation if it correlated to higher rates of Alzheimer's, because the researchers had good reason to believe that it did. And they found a direct, like linear relationship. And I use the word sanitization, not clean. Sanitization is you're killing everything. It's the antibacterial mentality. It's the bleach. It's the it's antibiotic mentality. And so what research, and this is from Oxford, right? What the researchers surmised was the lack of the human microbiome on the skin because of antibacterial products, of which most of them had fragrances, which hurts that as well, caused systemic inflammation that they are proposing is leading cause of Alzheimer's and a contributing factor to why we have such high rates of Alzheimer's. And so that is the issue when you're looking at the world scope about how many people are adapting the American lifestyle. Everyone likes what it's sexy. It smells good. People think looks good. It's American. I mean, our way of life has infiltrated and it's causing chronic disease across the world. And of course you would think obesity, cancer, heart attack, and stroke, and the like. And so that is just antibacterial. So that is one thing I would look at. If it says antibacterial on the bottle, just throw that away. It's absolute trash. You need a human microbiome on your skin, and you want it to be flourishing. There's so much about this, Doc, because research has actually suggested that essential oils have what's known as, the researchers have called it, cell selectivity. Essential oils will not kill healthy bacteria. It targets the pathogenic bacteria. So people often ask, well, if I ingest these essential oils that are shown, like lemon and oregano, to heal and restore leaky gut or soothe SIBO or IBS, is that killing the good bacteria? No. And there was this research study just 2 years ago that confirmed it again, saying, look, you don't have to worry about using the essential oil in its proper dilutions. Again, you just don't, we didn't talk about safety, but you just don't slather a bunch of oils on your skin and go on your day. Like this, you're looking at 10 pounds of lavender flowers. This is highly concentrated plant-based matter. This is man-made. You're not going to find a pool of lavender in France. This is extracted, steam distilled, or cold pressed. And so we have to use these things very cautiously and very wisely.
So when you're looking at these, and by the way, going back to toxins and microbiome and the rest, absolutely 100% in agreement. All the studies I've been looking at, because I'm in the process of doing a full dive AI search into every chronic disease, or at least the big ones that are out there. The toxins are affecting the microbiome. The sanitation you're talking about, the allergies and asthma in this country, much higher because we've sanitized. You need exposure to germs, right?
Yeah.
To natural things for your immune system to get used to it. So you're absolutely right. They're finding pesticides in Alzheimer's brains. They're finding all kinds of toxins. It's responsible for a lot of the diseases we're seeing with infections, with microbiome issues, right? There's a lot of things driving it. So, it's fascinating your work on essential oils. So tell me, if someone was going to have a set of essential oils at home, I've learned a little bit about peppermint waking people up and helping, with migraines, and lavender calming people down. I know a little from my wife, obviously, and the essential oils I use is more biofilm, right? What are the ones you think people should know about? Some like a kit they would have at home. Some of the most important ones for immunity, for detox, for calming them. What are the ones that you suggest to people when you're speaking to them?
Yeah, I am really grateful that these companies have done the work and they've created blends. And we know that essential oils have synergistic effect with each other. So frankincense by itself has a certain level of efficacy, but when you combine it with, let's say, myrrh, it compounds the efficacy and it's wonderful. So you want to look for synergy blends, and these companies have done the research and they've created immunity blend, sleeping blend, love blend, right, to stimulate the libido. So I would say lean on the companies that you're buying from to buy blends to take the guesswork out. And then also, oftentimes these starter kits are selling the base essential oils like orange, lemon, peppermint, rosemary, clove, cinnamon, just a variety of them. And so I would just say start there. You don't need the $1,000 kit that has all the expensive one. Be careful though about price. I mean,
Mhm.
be careful about price. When you go to Whole Foods, for example, and you see rose oil being sold for $15, it's not rose. It's impossible. Literally is impossible. It takes 750,000 rose petals to get one itty bitty bottle of rose. And so what they're doing is that bottle has basically a carrier oil like jojoba with a couple drops of rose, maybe, and you have no idea, or it's just fake. And so I want to caution people, price does matter. Certain essential oils, lemon balm, also known as Melissa, frankincense, I mentioned rose. Others are pricey. I mean, you're not going to find these for $5 or $10. However, the citrus oils I'm going to go back to often, because if I had to give everyone a recommendation, I would say get clove, get orange, and get peppermint. And those three blend very well together, especially producing and contributing to a healthy oral mouth microbiome. So you could add a drop to your toothpaste or make your own toothpaste. You could oil pull, which is a fantastic detoxification strategy. You get like a tablespoon of coconut oil or sesame seed oil. This is, again, an ancient Ayurvedic practice. Just put one drop of clove or peppermint, or you can mix them together, but they blend well together. But they have very much synergistic effects to it. And peppermint, like you mentioned, is invigorating. Research has suggested that college athletes evaluated with just a drop of peppermint orally increased VO2 max and athletic performance. It creates an alertness. Clove is extremely anti-infection properties. Some studies suggest that it has the highest content of antioxidant in the world. So you look at the ORAC scale, the scale of antioxidants in food. You have, let's say, wild blueberries, which is like 10,000 or something on the ORAC scale. I've seen studies suggest that clove is 1,000,000. You cannot get the antioxidant capacity in your food that you can with essential oils, just because they're so concentrated. But I always want to point in a healthy fear, I guess we could call it, but hesitancy. If you're taking warfarin or on a blood thinner, don't be ingesting clove, because it's a natural blood thinner and you can internally hemorrhage. Like, you got to understand the contraindications if you want to use essential oils as medicine. Going back to orange, I've mentioned this several different times. Mood boosting, cancer fighting, anti-inflammatory, but I like it for cleaning. My wife actually combines, we have a glass cleaner recipe that includes orange and peppermint, and it's just so wonderfully effective. And you could just use orange by itself, but I would just start there. Get a starter kit if you want. Don't be spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars yet. Get used to this stuff. And let me point out one thing too, Doc. I'm proposing that we, instead of, because again, and we didn't even mention flavor, like we haven't even talked about food. Anything that you taste that has a flavor in it is essential oil based, and 99.9% of the time it's artificial flavor. So what do you think flavors your Coca-Cola, your peppermint mint patties? It's a synthetic version of the essential oil. So anything you taste, anything you smell is synthetic essential oil in conventional products that people buy on a regular basis. So what I'm wanting to encourage people with is start slow, is think about what are the things that we are ingesting, things that we are inhaling, and really revisit, can I replace that with a DIY version or not? And then go by product, by product, by product. And it's fun. I mean, my website, we have hundreds of recipes, remedies. And if you're going to use essential oils as medicine, you have to take extra precaution. But what I'm proposing is similar to how people live without knowing. I mean, people, Doc, are just ignorantly, innocently living in a toxic fragrance, toxic flavor lifestyle without thinking twice. I just want to flip that on its head and embrace a natural version of it, which so happens to be the essential oil. So I don't use essential oils to prevent disease. I'm not there. I use essential oils to enhance my life. It is my flavor. It is my aroma in my body care and cleaning products. And I just, again, a drop here, a drop here is all that you need to create a wonderful healing effect. And so the sky's the limit on it. When you do want to use essential oils for recovery from disease or prevention or treatment, then we increase the dose. And that's the bottom line. It's a matter of one drop versus, let's say, 6, and whether or not you ingest it or put it on your skin or inhale it. So once you start understanding the science and the safety mechanisms behind this, you'll just be empowered that you can make your own medicine and you can create a more non-toxic life, or I should say, a less toxic environment in your home.
That's great. So, Eric, you were talking about a website where people can get recipes and find
Yeah.
out more about this because obviously, it's also buyer beware, as you said. You got to be careful. You might think something is pure out there. It's not. Where can they get more information and learn from you directly? What's the best way for them to get that information?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again. People can go to naturallivingfamily.com. You can go to my website and just search whatever it is that you're looking for. We have best-selling books that are available anywhere books are sold or on Amazon. I would suggest if you really want to dive in, get my first book, The Healing Power of Essential Oils. My last book, The Essential Oils Apothecary, covers in depth chronic disease. And maybe considering this Lyme event, people might be more interested in that because we go into the nitty-gritty on literally how to use essential oils to balance blood sugar, to produce a wonderful healing response for a variety of different chronic diseases. And people have really enjoyed that and give us some great testimonials.
No, it's wonderful, and as you said before, this is not woo-woo medicine necessarily. There's actually hard science backing up the essential oils and what it actually does to the brain. And by the way, we started earlier on when we started this talk about limbic dysfunction and the fact that trauma and breathing in wildfire smoke and all of the things that happen to us with trauma affect our limbic system, which does affect our autonomic nervous system, our mood, and the rest. The vast majority of my patients have limbic dysfunction. So, we do need to find ways to reverse this limbic dysfunction to get into a nice, calm, healing mode. I mean, I talk to people about meditation and yoga and all different ways of relaxing and even limbic retraining. But it sounds like the essential oils, the way you're putting it, is a very simple, natural way to help with healing that I don't think most people are aware of. And I think this is really going to enhance people's lives, learning about it again. So one more time for your website, I want to make sure people get this so they know where to go to get this information.
Yep, you can go to naturallivingfamily.com.
Thank you. Eric, this was great. I really want to thank you for taking your time today to do this. I'm not going to give my wife, I'm not going to make jokes with her anymore about all the essential oils she's got around the house now that you basically told me this. So thank you for doing this today. For those of you who've been listening, my name is Dr. Richard Horowitz. I'm co-host of the Dr. Talk Healing Lyme Summit 2.0. I've been with Dr. Eric Flinsky, really discussing some fascinating work on essential oils, different than the way I've been using it in treating Lyme, but ways that will enhance your life. And again, talking about how all these environmental toxins are getting in, destroying your body, and how we have to be very careful with clean living. So, Eric, thank you again for taking the time today. This was a real pleasure.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody. God bless.
Good. Hope to see you all again soon. Thank you very much for joining us today. Bye-bye.